Hey, what is going on, guys? It's Caleb here again, and this is another video for the leveling up your design skill series. And in this one, I'm gonna share 3 different tips with you guys that help you a lot to stay on top of the design world and basically just become a better designer. So if you are a designer like myself, right, has been in the industry for a while now, I think this is gonna be pretty helpful. So let's get started. And the first one is, like I said, right, like if you have been in the industry for a while now, you definitely have established some kind of design system for yourself, right? If that is, like how you lay out the page, your page structure, page layout, grid system, whatever, right? So there's a lot of things that is already in your design system. And my first tip is don't be afraid of breaking those design system, because just imagine, right? Like for me, when I was started, this design thing like 10 years ago, then the design world is very, very different back then, right? So we were using kind of realistic design UI, right? Like making a button that really looked like a real physical button, or like keeping everything, all the content about the fold, because back in the days, people believe that nobody's going to scroll on the page and stuff like that, right? So that kind of design system, if you have been keeping until this day, that would be extremely odd, right? Or not like, that extreme, but just like, if few back years ago, like border radius, we used to use, let's say, only 4 pixel border radius or like 2 pixel border radius. Right now, people are using a little bit wider border radius and stuff like that. So that is changing like slightly and slightly over time, every single year, every few years. Design trend, you can notice that is improving every little bit. So if you're keeping your old habit for a long time, right, then that is just so hard to make that change. And I believe, that is where people have the kind of impression in mind that, older designer is dated, older designer don't keep up with the trend, because the fact is, a lot of older designers, they have their old design system that they are still using like 10 years, 20 years later. So my thinking is that, like if you want to be a designer that is keeping up to date, so every single project, or at least what I'm doing right now, every single new project coming in, I want to update my own design system, right? So I will do some new research and go online and check out, let's say, the top designer on Dribbble, what are they doing right now? What kind of design, kind of language they're using right now? Is it kind of be a bolder font, or like, a wider header space or stuff like that? It's just little adjustments, right? How can I update my own design system, refresh, and just make sure that I'm staying on top of this kind of new design trend, right? So that is exactly what I'm doing every single time. I just try to improve my system a little bit to help me to be updated, right? So my work is not gonna be like 10 years ago or like 5 years ago and things like that, right? So that is my tip. And also, like in Google too, I'm working in Google right now. Like Google has mature design number 2, right? So mature design GM2, and we have been using that for a long time. So a lot of our design is kind of outdated, and we have to, like, right now we're working on GM3 now. So like we have new UI, new design fonts, and new stuff, right? So we have to update the whole thing. And Google has been, a company for over like 10, 20 years. And just imagine if nothing's improving, right? That company will not survive until now. So just think about, like, Google is constantly improving, and so should a designer like yourself or like myself, right? So improving, don't be afraid to dig your old kind of style or system that you have established. Every single time, just think about, like, how can I update my system so that I'm staying on top of the design world. So that is the first one. And then the second one is about your design work, your design ethic, or just being a person in general. It's focus on the details, right? Everything in life, you have to focus on the details if you want to achieve the excellence, right? You have to be pixel perfect if you're a UI designer. So being very, very detail oriented, being pixel perfect is very, very super important. I talk about it a lot of time in my video as well. And it just, like, just imagine, right? If you're using a laptop, if you're using a phone, right? Some phones, they have the camera right in the center part, like top center of the screen, right? Just imagine, like, if that kind of camera circle, right, is like 1 millimeter on the left or 1 millimeter on the right, or 2, right? Then you will feel kind of odd. Like every single day you look at that, you will notice it, and that's just become an eyesore, right? Or just think about, like, your laptop, Apple laptop, right? You have 2 speakers on the side. What if, like, one side is like 1 mm wider than the other side, right? Every single day when you're using it, you will notice it, and that just shows that you're not very attentive to the details, and you're just not that at a professional level, right? So every single thing in life, like, design has to be very precise, and it has to be matching all of these kind of spec and stuff, and has to be aligned properly, right? So that is kind of the level that you want to achieve, right? Every single thing you have to measure it, not even 1 pixel off, because like even that 1 pixel off, people can notice it. So something that is going to help you to become more pixel perfect, right? Like I made a video last month as well. Like my last video actually talked about like how to utilize the Google material design gridding, right? So basically the 8 pixel grid, right? 8 pixel multiplied by 8, the grid system, right? So that video, I think I kind of demonstrate how I make my design pixel perfect. So if you want to check that out, definitely go and check that out. Like website design grid is like 12, and then mobile is 14, stick to a grid. I still notice a lot of designers, even senior designers, they're not sticking to that. They're not even using a grid, right? They're basically just like eyeing the components and aligning by themselves manually, right? So that is definitely not pixel perfect. So using grid definitely gonna be helping a lot. So definitely don't miss that, right? And then the final one, the third tip is you want to design something that makes sense. And that seems like a very kind of like, hey, you know, like everybody know that things make sense, right? But I'm telling you that like designing things that make sense is actually a lot deeper than what people think, right? So as a designer like ourselves, right, then every single time we design things, we think from our perspective, right? I'm thinking about this, or I'm making the screen like that, right? I'm thinking about this from my perspective. That may look like this, that may look like that, right? But one thing that I notice right now is when I'm working at a big company like Google, right? Like everybody has their own perspective of looking at things, right? Then like they can definitely catch a lot of things that doesn't make sense when you present it to the team, right? And that will just make you look very stupid when you're presenting it. You're like, why did I not think about like that stuff when I was designing it? Why would I miss this, right? So my checklist for myself now is every single thing that I do, I have to put the perspective from the user in mind, where I have to basically put myself in the user's shoes when I finish any part of my designs, right? I have to think about if I'm that user, how I'm going to be receiving this design, right? How I'm going to be using this, how I'm going to be thinking about the flow, right? Like if I'm designing for, let's say, elderly people, right? Then how would they be looking at the design? Should my font be bigger? Should everything be more obvious, right? Should we just make the whole thing more simple? Or for kids too, right? How does kids, like what kind of things that are more eye-catching for kids, right? How would I run my design from the perspective of the person that I'm designing it for, right? So making things make sense definitely is a world knowledge out there. And you can see everything in life, like your MacBook laptop is super well thought out. They definitely have a lot of people keep thinking about how they're using the laptop, so they're designing in a way that you will be happy about using this, right? So you have to keep running the perspective, not from yourself, but from the user, and just make sure that the thing that you do actually makes sense. If you check online, like design that doesn't make sense, where you can find a lot of stupid design out there. So don't be one of those designers that design stuff that doesn't make sense. So these are all the 3 tips that I have to share with you guys, and I hope that, you know, like this is helpful. At least like right now I have a checklist for myself, right? This is what I'm going to be doing to keep myself as a designers that is matching the trends and not be outdated. And that is actually a very scary thing too, right? If you're an older designer, you'll be like, you're like all these young kids coming out right now, they must be better than me and all that stuff, right? But if you follow these tips, I'm pretty sure that you can stay on top of the trends and you can keep yourself refreshed. And your age, your experience, just make yourself feel more like a professional than being a dude that is phased out or outdated. So hope this makes sense, and if you like the content, definitely give it a thumbs up. And if you have any suggestions about stuff that I should be making, definitely let me know as well. Like I'm kind of out of ideas right now. Sometimes it's just very hard to come up with ideas all the time when I already have like, you know, 60, 70 videos on my YouTube channel. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask it. I'll try to make a video to answer those, and that'll be really appreciated as well. And definitely thumbs up the video and subscribe if you like, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Cheers.